Which means we can finally stop calling developing countries by simply removing our foot from their throat and allowing them to actually develop unencumbered by our dependency on their suffering. So what you really don't want to do is stuff like trying to fence all the foreigners out and force women to have babies by removing their autonomy. That sounds like the first chapter in a book about the collapse of a civilization, which at this point is beginning to look like it might not altogether be a bad thing, but sure.
Hey fam, Gracie here once again. Welcome back to the channel. I am hoping that from wherever you my people are watching me from, you are doing alright and God has preserved and protected you very well. And to you that usually support me on here, thank you so very much for your support. That really means a lot to me, and I don't take any of you for granted. We have an interesting episode, and I have brought you different episodes where the palm-colored people are panicking. In this episode, we have a palm-colored man in a clip that we are going to be reacting on that is telling his people that if you are afraid of dying down and your civilization disappearing on the face of the earth, you have to do a few of these things. Isn't it interesting that at a time like this, they are literally coming out because they are worried, because we all know that they are not giving birth anymore. And so for any civilization to die down, it starts with, no productions at all. And that's one of the things that is worrying them. We have another clip that we will be looking at as well, where literally palm-colored people are now worried because they are saying, when you look at a black mother and their children, it is going to be black kids and, their mothers. But when you look at palm-colored people and their children, it is a palm-colored and a black kid, and is wondering, what is happening? It looks like we are not giving birth anymore to our own. I want you guys to listen to what he has to say, and we will come back and definitely talk about it.
But I want to know how it is you voted for Donald Trump when you're so into facts, because his entire campaign is not based in facts. It was all based in propaganda and emotion.
I voted for Donald Trump for one reason only. His policies, if implemented, would slow the dispossession of whites in the United States. If you were to deport all illegal immigrants, if you were to think very hard about letting in any Muslims, all of this would slow the rate at which whites are becoming a minority.
Why are you so worried about the white dispossession of America?
Because I want my people to survive. Is that so strange? We don't control China. We don't control any place where whites are not a majority. And if we become a minority, we will not control our own destiny anymore.
I grew up in this country as a minority, as the children of immigrants. I was their first child born in America. And while I didn't have much possession or didn't much control, I really enjoyed myself. And I think that if you ask a lot of Americans, they would say that I had a lot to offer this country. According to you, I guess I would be perpetuating the dispossession of white America.
That is true. That is true.
Would you say that you wouldn't want me in this country?
At some point, when my ancestors built this nation, they did not build it with the intention of giving it away to Mexicans or Chinese or Haitians or to anyone else.
Do you consider it, you keep saying your ancestors built this country, you consider that a fact?
Who else built it?
Black people, Native Americans, Chinese people who came and built the railroads.
Do you think none of that could have been
Italian
achieved?
people?
But they're Europeans, aren't
Hey, if you're one of those white people that's like worried about the decline of white people, like, we're gonna be a minority by 2087 or whatever. You know what the solution to that is? Equality. Yeah, increasing equality also creates a better outcome for people with hateful ideologies, because making the world better, it makes the world better, and well, they're in the world too. Yeah, it turns out a lot of the numbers show that a higher standard of living directly correlates to a decrease in birth rate. When people have more access to information and resources, they also have more access to opportunity, which means they have more options and more prospects, which means they're going to start planning the way they want their life to go, which usually is not going to involve having 5 kids in your 20s. So when you create a global consumer-based economic infrastructure where the white population, generally speaking, has a higher standard of living than other ethnic groups, you're going to create a situation where the white population starts declining faster than other ethnic groups. You also create a situation where the black and brown people have to migrate to where the white people are because you've migrated all the opportunity to where all the white people are. So, if we want to change the inequality created by a consumer-based economy, it stands to reason that we have to change the nature of how we consume. If we financially de-incentivize things like planned obsolescence and wasteful overproduction, then we decrease things like wasteful overconsumption. If we prioritize properly conserving and utilizing the planet's natural wealth and resources over actively destroying those resources to stimulate the economy, then we also decrease wasteful overconsumption. You're a conservative. You like conserving things, right? If we remove our economy's dependency on pointless waste, we remove the corporate incentive to keep destabilizing the global south to exploit it for cheap labor and resources. Which means we can finally stop calling developing countries by simply removing our foot from their throat and allowing them to actually develop unencumbered by our dependency on their suffering. And increasing opportunity for developing countries also increases opportunity within developing countries, which increases opportunity for marginalized groups within their community, which creates more equality. And on that note, there's also numbers that show that empowering and increasing the autonomy of women within a society makes that society better. Like, quickly. So what you really don't want to do is stuff like trying to fence all the foreigners out and force women to have babies by removing their autonomy. That sounds like the first chapter in a book about the collapse of a civilization, which at this point is beginning to look like it might not altogether be a bad thing, but surely we can think of a less cartoonishly evil way to implode our own economy.
So when you type white mother with her child on Google Images, the majority of pictures that come up are a white mother with her interracial child. However, when you type black mother with her child on Google Images, the majority of pictures are black mothers with their black children, no interracial kids in sight.
Have you noticed that it's now white boys who are bitching about racism every single hour, especially on TikTok and Twitter? They say that there is a mission to depopulate them and get them extinct out of the planet. You can't make this shit up, bro. Like, you can't make this shit up. We're really living in a simulation right now. White boys bitching on every single post on Twitter, including Elon Musk, complaining that there is a campaign to take them out.
All of these are the efforts or the kicks of a dying horse, because it knows that it's going. There's nothing to do. And I think that's why we have to be very careful with their last dates, because they are capable of doing anything. That's why you realize they are implementing and putting systems in place that are literally about to cause destruction and extinction of everything else. You know, these people are like Lucifer. They don't die alone. They are the type of people that are like, hey, if we are to die, we are dying with you. And that is actually very evident with, everything they are inventing, the diseases they are making, how they're advocating for things that really do not make sense, how they find that very okay when we know most of these are actually mental health issues. You see, palm-colored people know exactly how minorities get treated. And that's why they are afraid of people doing unto them what they have done to them. These are the same group of people that have managed to subjugate and oppress the entire globe. But now that it's their time to become the minorities, they are afraid. They can't stand it. That's why they are against, migrants coming to their country. You heard it very clearly. The guy is like, the reason as to why we voted for him, it's not because we care for this country that much. It's because we want to sustain the system of white supremacy. We know that our time has come, but we still want to stay here. Isn't that unfortunate? We say statistics show that by 2087, they would have died down and their civilization would have died down. Which, in my opinion, was that a civilization? Do they even have any right to speak about morals and teaching people about this and that when everything that they have done has been stolen? Some people that are saying, oh, we are fighting for ourselves. We are not controlling anyone. Are you sure about that? One of their own said that if they want this to really, their civilization to stay, then they're supposed to give everyone else equal rights. But do you think they can do that? I doubt. They've never ever wanted to share the bread with anybody else. If you do not run through the so-called developing countries and rob them of their resources, which resources are the opportunities that are supposed to be in that country, which is going to give them jobs, you wouldn't be worrying about people flooding to your country. But it's because you've made your country the only place that has opportunities while you run through these other countries. You take everything that belongs to them. Now you're the same people that are crying. When you deal with and unalive and end the lives of great leaders in these developing countries who are capable of actually changing these countries, and then now you are here saying that you do not have any control for any particular country, and you also realize that most of them really want to be victims so bad, because you had that guy saying, we don't want to be dispossessed from our land. Which land? The land that you stole from the natives of that land? That belongs to you? Yeah? And then he's saying that, they built this with their ancestors, built this not to give it away. Like, when did your ancestors build this? My goodness, the delusion and the things that these people believe sometimes is so sickening and so wild to even imagine. And this Chinese guy in another clip was like, you believe that your ancestors built this? I was like, yeah, who else did? Oh my goodness, boldly. The bold question of who else did. When they know for sure it's black people that built that country and more are the minorities. So I don't know if this advice is really going to work for them, because again, we are dealing with a group of humans that are just, that's in their nature. That's in their DNA. Interesting part is the West in general, actually, they're not having kids anymore. Japan, you just heard that they're also, complaining they're not having kids. In Korea, they're not having kids. I think it's China and Africa that are producing kids. And probably you heard also Latinos, they're also having kids. Also black people in general, they are still okay with the idea of having kids. But also there's something that is very, very interesting that I've noticed, guys, which I think is very, very important. Do you realize the rate at which they are trying to take kids from families? That even when there's no reason as to why kids should be taken away from their parents, these people are so quick to call child care services to come and monitor the family of black people. And before you know, this kid is being taken out of, their home because of probably something that is very small. So I realize they are taking kids because they can't have kids anymore. And they're the same people that are always on the list of adopting kids. A lot of people be asking, why is it that black people do not adopt kids? They always have their own kids. Most of them do have their own kids. So you realize that at least they want to, probably if they can't have kids, then they will want to have some to indoctrinate. The thing is, if you really, really want people to treat you well, treat them as you want. It's the something that we normally tell over here in Africa. They will say to people to treat people well. Or they will tell you, treat your wife really well if you are a man, because if something happens, this woman is the same person that is going to be taking care of you. Or sometimes it's like the parents, take care of these kids, because once you get old, over here in Africa, once you get old, these same people, these same kids are the same kids that are going to be taking care of you. So it will depend on how you treated them. So I want you to imagine the trail and the history and the past that they have left behind, the pain and the misery. They do have every reason to fear. The scriptures say that you reap as you sow. What you sow is what you reap. So I don't think people are going to be nice to them, even if they choose to change. Because not everybody is going to forgive and forget. Of course, there are those that are going to forgive and forget, but there are those that don't want to move on, and they will want to do to them as they have done to the world. You think judgment is come upon them? At the end of this conversation, you cannot stop God's judgment regardless of what you're doing. There's a scripture that came to mind while I was discussing all of what we have talked about and what we have seen in these clips and what we've been reacting on. It is in Psalms chapter 50 and then verses 20. And it says, "These things you have done, and I kept silent. You thought that I was altogether like you, but I will rebuke you and set them in order before your eyes." So, some of these people had done things and they think they equal themselves to God, and they thought they, they have the power to decide who is this and who is that. I think for all the sins and the past and the things and the blood that you have poured, yes, of innocent people, God has a way of dealing with you and passing his judgment onto these people. Put your thoughts in the comment section and subscribe to the channel if you have not, and you guys will let me see you in another amazing video. My name is Gracie and I love you all. Peace.